In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzy Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable to the podcast where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Chad Robinson, and joining me today, I have no idea where you've been the last several months, Bryan Frye. I don't know what I did. What did I say? I feel like we've grown apart.
Ninja vanish. No, it was just one of my impressive 6-week lulls.
At least 6.
But before 3 in a row, I'm in the middle of 3 in a row, so it's I get mine in clumps.
But not with me. I haven't seen
that's
you
true.
in
That's
months.
true.
I can
That's
totally
true.
see you with smoke bombs or something, just throwing them at the floor and trying to walk out of a room.
What's the I prefer thinking of it like that part in I think it was Ocean's 13, where it's like, where are those guys? And they're down in Mexico starting a revolution at the dice factory or whatever. It's like, Fry's doing something. La revolution.
And also joining me today, because it is a dealer's choice, we have a third co-host from the roundtable, Lizzy Haynes. I just can't quit you.
I know. We're like the dynamic duo. I love it.
I do. This is fun. So this is Bryan's dealer's choice. We will get to that in a minute. But Russell's prepared some warm-up questions. So Bryan, I'll kick it to you first. Each of the hosts today has children. What are your kids' favorite movies at the moment? Usually these questions are very connected to the movie that we're going to talk about. There's a dark connection here, but I don't know where this is going.
I hope this movie ends up being one of my daughter's favorite movies, but it's definitely not something she's watching right now. Yeah.
What are they doing, Daddy? Doggy style, moving on.
Like he tripped and you fell?
Yes. My oldest is really into Sonic. That's something that has not changed for years. He's into Sonic. He is so psyched about this new Knuckles series. He's a Sonic man through and through.
I say I can glide.
He's very, very excited. And my two toddlers aren't quite as interesting. It's like Peppa Pig and Blippi.
Oh, no.
Blippi is rough.
We're almost out of the Flippy phase, and I'm so excited.
That dude's career arc is wild. He went from taking a dump on a college roommate to beloved children's host.
Right. I will say my middle child was Blippi for Halloween, and he was absolutely adorable, but I am not a big Blippi fan. He's just obsessed.
Peppa was the enemy in our house. For me, I don't know if you can count Nightmare Before Christmas. That is one of my daughter's favorite movies. If not, you know what? I will take any single movie that doesn't feature talking puppies. Just that entire genre. Any of the Buddies movies, any of the Paw Patrol movies. Please
but
stop.
I love Bluey.
That's true.
I would accept everything else in order to not get rid of Bluey.
I love Bluey.
Bluey's the show that my daughter. I think I talk about Bluey just about every time I'm on the podcast. But Bluey's the show that when I'm like, "Hey, honey, what do you want to watch?" and I'm going, "Say Bluey, say Bluey, say Bluey, say Bluey, Bluey." Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So good. It's it's funny and cute and
endearing. It's a very endearing show. I've gotten several games to play off of Bluey.
I do wish
it's a useful parenting tool.
I do wish the parents would stop acquiescing to everything the kids ask for the most part. They're like, "Hey, do you want to play this game?" And then they go and be great parents. I'm like, can't you just, Bandit, can you just please suck for a minute and be like, "No, Daddy's going to go sit on the couch and think about his life choices.
He was too rough with bingo one time.
There we go. Yes.
It's funny that you brought up Sonic. Sonic was the bane of my existence for about 45 minutes the other day. I had it stuck in my head that I really wanted to buy a Sonic Youth t-shirt. But if you Google Sonic, but we are now at the point in our lives where if you Google Sonic Youth, you will get youth Sonic the Hedgehog t-shirts.
That makes sense.
Not band t-shirts for the Sonic Youth. And everywhere I went band, whatever, trying to add keywords, and no matter what, at least 75% of the results were Sonic the Hedgehog. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to be unhappy for 5-10 minutes.
Well, Aaron was obsessed with Sonic as a kid. My brother wasn't, so therefore I was not. But it's so funny to see him come back full throttle. Like everybody's obsessed.
Knuckles was my favorite Sonic character, much the same that Zero was in Mega Man.
Agreed. Excellent choices.
Probably had something to do with the laser sword, though.
Fair.
Probably.
Fry, what's the last movie you saw?
Oh, gosh. The last movie I saw was... Well, I'm in the process. It's taken several sittings. I'm in the process of watching Madam Web right now on Netflix.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Process. That doesn't sound good if you're in the process.
It's so bad.
So I'll give a brief explanation of this. I typically get into watching certain things in certain places, and I started watching Madam Web when I work out in the morning. So I've been specifically watching it on the treadmill, and I don't stay on the treadmill for 2 hours and 15 minutes or whatever. So that's the reason it's come in segments, because each morning I watch some of it. So no, it's not spectacular so far, but it is where I'm watching it and why I'm watching it that way.
Oh, it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse. It's just, wow. Yeah, Dakota Johnson was not thrilled with that movie at all. Lizzy, what's the last movie you saw?
You know, I was telling Chad before we started recording, we are recording this a few days after Mother's Day, and we had a bunch of family in town. And although I truly enjoyed it so much, like by the end of the day on Mother's Day, I was completely depleted. And I told Aaron, like, I would just love, like, how you can treat me right now for Mother's Day is going and getting Taco Bell, and I need to watch something that does not require any brain cells. So I watched Bridesmaids. Felt like a good choice. I didn't want to scroll for too long. And I was like, you know what? I could handle a little bit of this. Like, I kind of want to rewatch that whole plane sequence. I don't watch it very often, but when, you know, she's like fighting over, Melissa McCarthy's fighting with the guy on whether or not he's an air marshal. Like, I was just like, I've got the first watch. And that is not, I don't put that movie on the pedestal that a lot of people do, but it was definitely cute. And I appreciated that it was a brainless watch.
My pure addiction right now is the Showtime series Billions. Have either of you watched that yet?
Aaron did. Yes.
They put it on, I guess, Amazon absorbed Freevee. So you can watch it with ads on Amazon Freevee. And I've watched about a season a week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's my thing. I'm on season 4 right now, and I'm just like, click.
Have you watched X-Men 97 yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have much to talk about.
They were like, I hated that it was an episode a week. I started it like, here we go, binge. And you may also like, no, what do you mean? What?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't watch it for weeks so I could save up and binge properly, because I don't do this week to week thing. That's brutal.
It's tough. It just ended. It's a giant hole in my life for a while.
I'm spoiled now. I don't like waiting. Don't make me wait.
That's fair. They do dump shows now of just here's an entire season
thing.
Well, I actually got a date night with my wife, which was wonderful. And by date night, I mean we both had to take off work and go see a movie at 11 a.m. while my daughter was at school. But we went and we saw Fall Guy. And you know what? That was a blast.
Yay.
It was a ton of fun. So it was a nice homage to stunt people. It's just a fun movie. They spent a lot of time making a joke of not knowing how to shoot the third act. I kind of felt like that wasn't just a joke. That was literally happening in the actual movie. But
Really
you know what?
don't know how to do it.
It was still fun. Very good time. So go see that in theaters, please. Stuff needs to be seen in theaters. Bryan, what did you choose for us to review today?
This is a really interesting movie for me because I don't technically remember how I saw it the first time. But this is at one of my absolute favorite revenge flicks. But we're doing 2006's Lucky Number Slevin.
That's right, starring Bryan's favorite Josh Hartnett, Lucy Liu.
I am an enthusiast.
Yes, you are a Josh Hartnett apologist. Like anytime he comes up. Bruce Willis is in this. Stanley Tucci, Ben Kingsley, actually credited as Sir Ben Kingsley. That was a big issue too. And Morgan Freeman. As Bryan said, this was released in 2006 with a budget of $27 million. It does not do particularly well. It grosses $22 million domestically, $56 million worldwide. That's good enough for 112th in the box office. Coming in ahead of it is Uma Thurman's My Super Ex-Girlfriend, and coming in right behind it is Waist Deep. I have no idea what that is. Number one movie of that year, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. IMDb gives this a 7.7. The critics do not like this movie very much. It's at a 52%, but the audience is pretty happy. They're at 87, so huge disparity. That's been unusual with the ones we've been on recently.
I won't have anybody ruin their ratings, but this movie was so much better than Dead Man's Chest. Oh my god!
Agreed with that.
Was that the third Pirates of the Caribbean?
No, it was the second one. It's the handcuff movie.
Okay.
What's his name? Gregory Rush? Is that his name that played
Jeffrey Rush?
Jeffrey Rush. Thank you. That played
Barbosa.
Davy. Yes, but then somebody else. Davy Jones.
Bill Nye.
Bill Nye. Thank you. Yes. Jeffrey Rush is Barbosa. You're right. It's been a minute.
Yeah, that CGI was mind-blowing, but you're right, that movie was not great.
7 years before the mast. I love him. I will watch. You want to talk about what a big Josh Hartnett fan I am? I'm a huge fan of Bill Nye. I'll watch I'll tell you, the movie that won me over for him was Love Actually.
I was just about to be like, I feel it in my fingers.
Feel it in my fingers.
Yes.
Feel it in
my toes.
We will have to do that movie someday.
Yes.
Such a great Christmas. It was just a great movie in general.
Agreed. Back to the movie we're doing. Bryan's starting it already. This is going to be a 3-hour episode. Awards. We've got some film festival winners. Milan International Film Festival. It wins Best Film and Best Actor for Josh Hartnett. It's also Directors Guild of Canada nomination for Outstanding Sound Editing. So, Bryan,
we're really big in Europe.
Bryan, when did you said you can't remember when you first saw this movie, but I assume this is one you keep coming back to. What were your expectations for this podcast?
There are a couple possibilities for this. I either saw it in downtown Morgantown or picked it up at Vintage Videos and Games. I feel like it almost has to be one of those two things, because that's kind of where I ended up seeing my more under the radar indie movies. This is not a movie I watch nearly as much as I should, but it is one of those movies that every time I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's happening. So it's on a very short list of, let's boot that up.
This is one of the only DVDs that Dustin Melbardis, our esteemed co-host, owns. So he famously has, what is it? It's like 3 DVDs. Dustin, chime in sometime. Right into the show.
I have 6. Indignation.
He's mentioned this weird story of how few DVDs, but one of them was this one. So
it's a good choice.
Lizzy, have you seen this movie before? And if you had, what were your expectations coming back to it?
Yes. So I just have to point out, so the last dealer's choice that I did for Bryan was with Dustin for Boondock Saints, and I ripped that movie to pieces. Oh my gosh. So I first personally feel very relieved and happy to be on one of your dealer's choices with a movie that I love and
Oh,
I
good.
really, really, truly love. I saw this movie, I think probably about 10-ish years ago, maybe even more than that. And I remember going into it thinking I was going to hate it. That was like definitely the vibe that I had of like, this movie is going to just not be my vibe at all. And I ended up loving it and finding it so much fun. I'm not exactly sure why I never revisited it. But upon this watch, I liked it just as much as I did the first time. And so much so that I definitely am going to put it in my back pocket for a rainy day.
I think one of the things that really got me about this movie is it's one I've been able to use for years, even prior to the podcast, in my back pocket for there's nothing you can tell me to watch that I haven't seen before, that I'll, there can't be anything else good out there and I'll be like, oh yeah, you should watch this. And then the person comes back and they're like, where did you find this? And I'm like, exactly. So that's, it is literally the epitome of something I would use for a dealer's choice, because I feel like everybody missed it, or to some extent, most people missed it. And I can't believe the critics are as hard on this as they are, because I think it's just an end-to-end thoroughly enjoyable movie.
Yeah, 52% seems stunningly
Yeah,
low.
it's crazy. And here's the thing. It may have been a $27 million movie, but it just went to salaries. Like this,
Right.
There's very little belly fat on this film.
It's true.
And I mean, there's no way much money went to anything other than paying the 6 people that made the movie happen.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if one of them took box office gross, but that was a bad move on
Right.
whoever did that.
Yeah.
I had not seen this movie. The title was just never appealing to me. It's a weird title, and for whatever reason, I think I was still mad at Josh Hartnett for Pearl Harbor, and
not his fault. Be mad at Ben. Be mad at Ben.
I was mad at Ben.
All right, wait, real quick. Audience spoiler alert. Be mad at Ben. He lived.
Oh, yes. I can be mad at Ben Affleck. Like, I gave him one more shot, and it was Daredevil, and then I was done with him.
Oh my gosh! Ouch.
He had a rough. He had a really rough early 2000s. It was.
No, I can blame Bryan. A memory is coming back because Bryan Frye took me to see Jersey Girl with him, and that was
okay. I like Jersey Girl. I'm sorry,
nope.
I like that movie.
No.
I may have line item deleted that movie from my brain, because I think I've told people that I haven't seen Jersey Girl.
I'm happy for you, but
I don't remember it.
we went together, and it was a bad time.
Oh, I love it. I love the like Sweeney Todd musical that they're. I think it's so cute.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible.
I think that was the movie that made Kevin Smith realize, oh, I can't do everything.
Probably,
yes.
It's fair.
Yes, but from the opening extreme violence of this movie to the shift, I'm like, okay, I've been on a lot of these with Bryan Frye. I've had Ice Harvest. I've had Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Like, I'm not going to call it paint by numbers, but there are boxes this is checking. And so this is all falling into place for me of, okay, yes, I understand why this is something that Bryan Frye is going to bat for. And I had a good time on those other two. So
I like a lot of different types of movies, but I definitely have a type.
Yes. Violent, dark humor. And Boondock Saints fits into that. But with Lizzy saying how bad of a time she had with Boondock Saints.
I mean, even Ravenous was kind of funny. So
yeah.
Yes. Ravenous is funny in like a.
It's messed up. You're kind of like,
it's funny in like a they're not in on it kind of way.
Right.
I got to bring that up because it was one of my daughter's spelling words. That doesn't seem like a spelling word for a second grader, but she goes, "Daddy, what's ravenous?" And I said, "Oh boy, have I got a movie for you."
Oh gosh.
Sarah's like, "No." I mean,
funny.
It's fine. She could learn what a Wendigo is. It's a Wendigo. But
it's all coming. We'll
yes.
get there. 10 more years, and we're going to be like, and on today's platter, we have
Yes.
flesh eaters. Yay!
Oh, there's an order. Ravenous is pretty deep in this order of things she will have to see, but there's a timeline. Like Gremlins is coming very, very soon.
That's not even going to be the only cannibal movie that I end up dealer's choicing by the end of all this, because I'm going to get you guys with 13th Warrior at some point.
Okay. All right. I thought you were going to go with like Green Inferno or Cannibal Holocaust.
No. The most maligned Viking war movie ever, 13th Warrior.
Looking forward to being on vacation while that
I was just going to say, I might be sick that day.
Dustin Russell, you are up. Well, if you weren't one of the like 13 people to see this in theaters, put us on pause. Check out this movie. It really is worth your time. It is a hidden gem that Bryan has uncovered. Lizzy is going to spoil it for you after the break.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we're back. Last warning before spoilers lie ahead. Lizzy, can you tell us what the heck happened during Lucky Number Slevin?
I will do my best. The Boss and the Rabbi, a once dynamic duo crime boss team that owned the streets of New York City. They made their mark by making an example of a man who made a fixed bet by taking him, his wife, and his son out. 20 years later, the Kingpins are mortal enemies. In comes Slevin, a flippant, down-on-his-luck guy who is mistaken for his friend Nick Fisher. Slevin is brought in to pay for Nick's debts to both bosses, and he agrees to play ball with both of them while confessing this strange turn of events with Nick's neighbor, Lindsay. Both the rabbi and the boss awaken after a turn of events tied up with Slevin looking down on them. He tells them the story of their claim to fame, of the fixed bet, and reveals his true identity of the son that survived thanks to the mercy of a hitman, a shadowy figure throughout the story. Slevin poetically exacts revenge in the same manner in which they killed his father, and he and Lindsay leave town with one heck of a meet cute.
Very nice. But why is he called the rabbi?
Because he's a rabbi.
I love that was the answer consistently through this entire movie. Yeah, this is one of those misdirection movies. Good Cat describes it as the Kansas City Shuffle. Right from the beginning, he talks about making you look one direction while going in another. And I really feel like late 1990s, early to mid 2000s, we get a bunch of these. We get Now You See Me, The Prestige, The International, The Illusionist, The Body, Cabin in the Woods. Why was this one overlooked?
I honestly don't know. This movie is teed up to be a box office hit just from the cast alone. Like you have Ben Kingsley, Stanley Tucci, Morgan Freeman, Josh Hartnett. I mean, you truly have Bruce Willis. You have such an amazing cast. This is really lined up to be a hit. And to be totally honest, I'm really not sure why this didn't hit. There's very little that I would change about this movie. I think perhaps it was a marketing piece. I don't really remember this movie being heavily advertised when it first came out. I was a senior in college in high school in 2006. So I didn't necessarily have my finger on the pulse in that way, but I just remember not knowing about this movie until years after when I watched it for the first time.
Yeah, I've seen films that were bad and have had a big cast, and they seem like they had the cover art and they have the straight to Netflix or bottom bin Netflix vibe to it. And sure, it's got Morgan Freeman and
Valentine's
Bruce
Day.
Willis. But I mean, I feel like that was just a flop. But you know what I'm talking about when you're at Walmart and you're in the $3.99 bin and you see and you're like, wow, there's a lot of random Bruce Willis cameo films in this, and I feel like I don't know what happens to movies from inception, and I don't mean the movie Inception, from the genesis of them making it to the end when they say, this is just going to end up as one of these. But I feel like maybe somehow it got shunted there partially because usually those movies don't come out in theaters at all. So I do feel like this just got kind of maybe branded as one of those when it wasn't meant to be, or something along those lines, because it blows my mind, especially just given its reviews from critics, why this is such a maligned film.
Yeah, it is weird. You're talking about those almost studio obligations where an actor does one for me and then one for them. So they do some artsy film. It's like, we're going to stick you in this terrible film. And suddenly there were 6 contracts that were stuck in a terrible film, but they forgot to make a terrible film. I can see that. Yeah, it's good.
I'm picturing Jason Statham on the front cover of Chaos right now when I'm talking about this. Like, there's just a couple movies where you're just like, yep, that's one of them right there.
Yeah, like Bruce Willis making bad movies towards the end of his career when he's diagnosed with his illness makes sense. When he's just like, hey, I'm trying to make as much money for my family as possible. He's not in the like Kevin Hart stage of his career where he just keeps taking whatever role is passed to him.
Yeah.
Like, Kevin Hart, get a better agent. I don't know, or be a little bit more choosy.
Cuba Gooding Jr. got that gold statue and said, I'm going to be in bad movies for the rest of my career. I win.
Daniel Radcliffe is kind of doing that. I mean, they're fun, interesting movies, but he's like, you're not going to think of me as Harry Potter anymore. I'm going to staple guns to my hand in the next movie and walk around in slippers. Guns Akimbo is a great movie, by the way. But yeah, he's just doing weird stuff. Same with Elijah Wood. And I did mention, we start off incredibly dark. Lizzy talked about in the summary, this dude loses a bet. He's suffocated with a bag over his head, which is horrible. After being beaten up, his wife is shot with a shotgun, and we think his kid is killed by this hitman. Pulls the trigger and everything. Just awful violence. And then we get the rest of this movie before bookending with a lot more violence. I mean, there's some violence throughout, but do you think this movie does a good job of balancing extreme violence with humor?
Yes, I do very much so. I think you have, well, first, one thing that I love about this movie is it definitely has that noir-y vibe to it. I think Bruce Willis probably lends the most of that, but every character seems to have some kind of dramatic monologue at one point or another, with the exception of Josh Hartnett, which very much pulls in that noir-esque tone to it. But I love it's so quippy at times. Josh Hartnett's character it described him in the summary as flippant. Like, he is just so cavalier about everything. He's literally being dragged in a towel to a crime boss, being told that he needs to put a hit on someone. Like, he needs to murder somebody. And he's just like, I'm not Nick Fisher. Like they're a little like Morgan Freeman's back and forth of being like, I've got the wrong guy. Do I have the wrong guy? I don't know. Do you have the wrong guy? Like, this is kind of back and forth. And then I think Lindsay is also her own little, like, that whole side story is its own little comedic relief, because she's so bubbly and flighty that it almost just, it puts some oxygen into the heaviness of the movie.
There's a line from This Is Where I Leave You between Jason Bateman, and I'm going to blank on the actress's name, but he's basically falling for her and he's admitting to it. And he goes, I'm emotionally unavailable and you're kind of weird. And I feel like that is the Josh Hartnett's like, gosh, you're weird. I really like you.
Yeah.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and I love that. That's
so
fantastic.
attracted to her zaniness, like the fact that
Right.
like she can't, like she keeps wanting to come in the door. Like she's kind of, I mean, it's Lucy Liu who's like just a very attractive woman in general. So like naturally she's just breathing and it's gonna come off sexy. But like because she's so like ditzy and silly, she's just like, well, pop back in the door. Like I thought I was gonna get one more show, and then pops back out. And I agree. Like that was so intentional. You can tell to make her like that. And it brings an air of comic relief to the movie.
She gets put in the quirky box. And quirky is what you say about someone that's attractive and you find cute. Weird is what you
Yes.
the same box for someone you do not find attractive.
Yeah, I also like the fact that, she is scattered in a way, but one of my favorite aspects of the movie is when Josh Hartnett finally realizes I need to watch what I say around her.
Yes.
Because she's not dumb. You know what I mean? Like when she starts calling him out on like little inaccuracies in his story and stuff. And he's like, huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, she's a doctor after everything we learned. I did like the appearances, the noir that Lizzie's talking about, with Good Cat just slipping from behind walls constantly. It's so tropey that he just appears and kind of slides against the wall in a ridiculous trench coat too, and sometimes even with a hat. Like he's just living this 40s film noir genre. I think this movie knows when to hit the gas and when to back off. Like I get a relief from the violence with a lot of the quips from Slevin, a lot of the humor from Lindsay, even the interaction with people that are being deadpan serious. Morgan Freeman's boss, Shlomo the rabbi. The interactions are funny, even when nobody's laughing. And this movie's smart. It's very, very smart about that. I think I'd get exhausted if we had the same level of violence from the beginning throughout the movie instead of just interspersed. We get a lot of relief. And again, I just feel like this is Bryan Frye's happy place where there are real consequences, but there's a lot of snarky comebacks despite the very, very real consequences that could go on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one of the real hallmarks of a noir film is that everything either will or won't work out, devil may care attitude from your protagonist. One character that always did a really good job of that, and I'm not sure if you guys have seen the movie, but there was a movie called Gangster Squad, and it had Josh Brolin and
Ethan Hawke, right?
No, God. Well, Sean Penn's in it too as the gangster. Anyway, the guy from Drive. God, why can't I remember his name? Barbie. Ken.
Oh, Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Gosling plays the devil may care guy, and he does a great job at. It's this traditional LA noir. He's got the hat. Fancy way of lighting a cigarette. Stuff like that, and this is an interesting take on that character because he actually blames it on the condition called anorexia, freedom from care or worry about just about anything. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. Right? So, but yeah, I like that little take on it where, you still get that attitude, the reason he can walk in and out of gangsters' apartments and kind of keep some level of smooth swagger, but it's based on the fact that, he's saying he's got this condition that makes him just not give a shit.
Are you buying that explanation? Like
I've never looked up to see if that's really a thing. But I'm going to right now.
I don't think it is. I don't think that's, I can't imagine who it is, but yeah, I do love his general attitude. I think that, I don't remember exactly what Morgan Freeman says, but at one point the boss even addresses it. He's just like, you're You're really like he says some kind of like adjacent to he's on thin ice with this big mouth, and I think he's impressed, honestly, by the fact that he's not just completely shaking and begging and doing all the things that they're probably really used to seeing, but instead he's just like, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Right. Yeah. So you're not going to believe that I'm not Nick Fisher, and now I owe you $92,000. What do I do? I did like the dialogue of, well, let's make it 90. I may have
Yes.
or undersold how little money I had. Bryan, is this a real disease?
All I can find are goofs saying that when you do the subtitles on the film, they have anorexia as what he's saying.
That's funny.
Okay.
But I thought it was either atorexia with a T or adurexia with a D. So I'm going to go with no, it's not a real thing, but I like the execution at which he tries to make it a thing.
Right.
I think the idea is he's trying to come up with a reason why to not tell her I'm actually a really good hitman myself, and I don't walk into a place I don't know how to walk out of.
I mean, if it is a real thing, it is a real thing.
Oh,
Stop.
Ataraxia is a state of freedom from emotional disturbance and anxiety, especially as an ongoing condition of soul-fulfilling attainment. Sign me up for this, because I am
Right?
I have the opposite of this. I'm like a little chihuahua that shakes all day from anxiety.
And I want to talk to a psychologist, and I want to know what the difference is between that and it's not narcissism. What's sociopathy? I want to know what the difference between anorexia and
it's got to be adjacent, because there's a complete lack of empathy going on.
Right. If you just don't give a shit, then doesn't that kind of... I'm not going to say it's the exact same thing, because clearly he can fall in love and have deep, meaningful relationships, but there's got to also...
Deep and meaningful, or is
right.
So like now naked?
Yeah, if something happened to... But again, he could be just making this up because he is also a hitman who's just very good at his job. So he just doesn't care about what's happening right then because he knows how you can get out of it.
Yeah, I definitely think he is capable of love and deep relationships, because at one point you question that when Bad Cat comes into the coroner's office and he's getting ready to shoot Lindsay, and he does. He successfully shoots her, and having it been a while since I had seen the movie, I kind of completely forgot about all that. And I was very upset when I saw that. I was like, wait, what? Like, you just allowed that to happen? Like, I guess you just never cared about her. And he was talking about how he was making love to her, and it really made me sad. And then seeing her at the airport where we first meet, who we later learn is Nick Fisher, that was a fun scene, because then at some point they're going to press the rewind button and show us. And during the time where he goes back into bed and snuggles her, and he's like, I have to tell you something, and then he starts walking her through it, you can definitely tell he's very nurturing. So I genuinely think that love was real for him.
I did like that callback with Good Cat saying he can understand because he didn't pull the trigger on Henry back in the day. So
right? Yes.
He's just like, yeah, you've messed with world-class assassin, which whatever.
It's another really good line.
Yeah.
How'd you know? Come on, man.
Right.
Stop it. You're embarrassing yourself.
We've talked about Lindsay a little bit, but let's get into that with Lucy Liu. It sounds like everyone was on board with this relationship. For me, I know Lucy Liu's short, but I feel like they allowed her to be short in this movie. I thought that was refreshing, where it's not just her torso panning up. There are comments about how small she is, and just, I think that's kind of contributing to this manic pixie-like energy. But did you enjoy the relationship? Did we need a love scene between these two?
I mean, I think it was integral to the noir-esque piece to have the girl person, but I did find it refreshing that, most of the time in these types of movies, it's better to have loved and lost, and that guy in the end ends up no better or worse than he was in the beginning. So to actually have, the guy get the girl in the end was a deviation. And that's where I think this movie kind of kind of flips off a lot of the tropes of noir where they say, this is what you think's going to happen, but it's a Kansas City shuffle.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's meta. I like that. I really do like it. I appreciate it. And to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, Fry, is like normally when there is a woman in these movies, like they can tend to take on like a femme fatale-ish kind of role. And I think we certainly have seen Lucy Liu in roles like that, but it's nice to see her in something where you just get to kind of connect with her sweetness, and she's soft and loving. And I think that that's really required, I think, in order to connect with the character Slevin, because at this, during their time where they're the ruse, like you don't understand necessarily that Slevin is Henry. You kind of operate under that assumption, but you don't necessarily know how it's going to all unfold. He's kind of exactly the way he describes. Like he's kind of apathetic, just like this very like flippant kind of go with the flow person. So you only really truly get to see glimpses of his actual heart and character when he's with Lindsay. And so then, and it also just, you need that because it helps you invest in him. Being able to see that his ability to connect with someone then allows you to connect with him.
I like that. I like that point. And I was with you. Fresh eyes. I was upset when I thought she was dead because so many noir-esque movies, either the woman winds up being evil or the woman winds up being dead. I was like, oh, okay, we're just checking that box too. And then when she winds up at the airport, I was immediately happier. And that put a huge sour note because I didn't understand. Good Cat says she saw me, but is that really a I have to murder you on the spot type issue?
Right.
Like they're working together. He could have just walked away. That felt like a weird note for me. I get that he's sort of gray throughout this movie. He's a world-class assassin, so he's not necessarily a good guy, although he does spare Henry. But are you satisfied with the Good Cat character, how he acts throughout this movie?
Yeah, I think he's necessary because you need the red herring, like because he provides this uneasiness of understanding that things are not what they seem. We know that to a certain degree because of the Nick Fisher confusion, but without Good Cat, because he makes it very clear that the boss says to Good Cat, like he claims that that's not really Nick Fisher. And then later the rabbi's like, I can tell when someone's lying. I don't think he's lying. I don't think that's Nick Fisher. And he's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I've got the kid and I have unfinished business. So it would be easy to think that you're just watching a movie about just a complete and total miscommunication. But because of Good Cat, the whole time, even before the actual twist is revealed, that things are deeper than what they seem because of him. And I think he keeps you on your toes a little bit.
Which is also against traditional, twist is we're here to surprise you. No, you always know something's not quite right, but we're not going to let on to exactly how wrong it is.
Yes, I think that was really fun because your guard is a little up when you watch this movie, and I do think that is intentional. Like this movie has this kind of self-awareness and sense of humor to it a little bit, and so I think that they are trying to say, hey, there's a twist here, but you're going to spend the entire time not knowing exactly what it is.
Yeah, he's our mentor character, and I do feel like there are other movies that we've seen that of. The guy stalking our hero turns out to be this mentor. I can't think of any immediate examples, but it is something I've seen before.
Boondock Saints.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Although Willem Dafoe joins them as well.
That's fair.
He's our main stalker. But yeah, Good Cat's. I feel like he's just there primarily to be the extreme trope. Like, this is definitely a noir movie. And Frye, I'll ask you this. Do you want more of Good Cat in this movie, or is he best left in the shadows, just kind of filling in a little bit of I know who this guy is, giving us a little tidbit.
I think he's the tease in all this. Like, you see all of this stuff presumably being done to your protagonist. He's getting bounced around and kicked around and punched in the face a lot. And in the background, you have this guy that did a lot of killing to start off the film. And it's not until I think at a certain point where you realize that it's the two of them who had done all the killing in the beginning of the film. And you're supposed to be, kind of believing that, he's got some purpose in this and that he's really cold-hearted because he's the one that they brought in to kill a child. So I don't remember if I had sorted it out when I saw it the first time that Josh Hartnett was supposed to be the little boy. I don't remember this movie having nearly the profound effect The Usual Suspects had on me or anything like that. So I think I probably figured out before the big reveal that that's what they were going for. But I don't think that's the gem of this film. That twist at the end was really, I think, only spelled out for the sake of the entire narrative of the revenge, which was the part that gave me goosebumps when I saw it. So it's, yeah, sure, the little child being the one coming back for revenge is the twist, but it's how every single character in the film is connected to that twist was the actual, like, that was the booty. That was the gold mine at the end of this, because you're like, oh snap. And then that culminating in Stanley Tucci's execution, you're just like, oh,
that was crazy. Yeah. Cause you're sitting in the car.
Right.
Oh,
and he's doing the exact same thing Bruce Willis does the entire film by like kind of popping up out of nowhere.
Yes.
And the best part of that is it finally explains why his name is Slevin Culebra.
Yes.
I just, that's the interweaving I like. And, you have things like out there that are just masterful at it. Something like Harry Potter, where, everything from book 1 ties into book 7, and it's so densely woven together to make sense the way it's supposed to make sense. When you have a film and it's shorter and it's still able to weave so many threads that you're not trying to figure out into the end. And when you have a movie with such a small cast like this one is, to feel bigger, but then also bring you back to something smaller, that's another gem of this film.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I remember also like the thought when he's on the phone, when Stanley Tucci's on the phone, and you can see the somber look on his face, and you realize after the fact why he was looking so somber, because he's like, oh my gosh, this is like the hit.
I was part of this. Yeah.
Yes, like I know exactly what you're talking about. You don't need to explain this to me. And I remember like on this rewatch again, because there's so much that I forgot. The only thing that I remembered when I watched this movie, the only thing was, this is going to sound super morbid, but I was like, I just remember two people sitting back to back with bags put over their heads. That's literally all I remember. And I don't necessarily remember why or anything else. So I'll just watch this movie with open eyes, knowing eventually that will happen. So I could not remember the Stanley Tucci twist. So seeing him in the back of the car with the gun, I'm like, why is he going to do that? Why is he going to do that? And then all of a sudden you see that like the door bust open, that he's the one that shot his mom. And so you're just like, oh, okay. Go for it. This is the last piece of your puzzle, so go for it. And it's just masterful. It is so good. And I'm not one of those people that celebrates revenge, but this movie was particularly fun to watch. And I think this kind of goes back to like the love story of it all, like connecting with this character. Like this movie does a great job of making you connect with Slevin, so that when he does get revenge, like you are happy for him. Like you are on that other side, like really like pumping your fist and super excited that there's been justice.
Did anybody else like really enjoy, and I don't mean this in like a psycho way, but it's going to sound like it, but how Bruce Willis kills Nick Fisher in the beginning of it?
I hate that. Like I have like a big like phobia. Like I don't like the
neck break. Oh, okay. I don't necessarily mean how. I just that there was a time.
To the left.
Oh, it's yes. 5. Hey, no. You misunderstood. I said there was a time.
Yes, that part is great. And then to learn later that was Nick Fisher. Like
Fisher,
it wasn't just
right.
like a random guy. And then him being like, sorry, kid, but there's a lot more to life than just living. And yes, I love that whole entire sequence. I also love, like, you think, I mean, not that this necessarily means anything, but like I remember you see that and I'm like, oh, like Bruce Willis is in a wheelchair. Like, I wonder how are they gonna tell us why he is, or is that gonna play some kind of role? Like that's just gonna be an interesting aside to his character. And then when he gets up and adds and then realizing that it's been there this whole time so that he can wheel Nick away, you know that you're in for a surprise of being like, nothing is the way that it seems.
I need a body. Yes. And we do have some comic book villain names. Like I kind of feel like this is Sin City-esque with Morgan Freeman's The Boss. And we also have Sir Ben Kingsley's The Rabbi. And we find out they've been at war with each other for years. I do like the reveal. Wait a minute. You're just across the street from each other?
Right.
Just staring at each other constantly.
Neither one of them leave. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So
we also have there's the mute, the fairy,
yes,
obviously Mr. Good Cat. I even thought the what was it, Detective Bukowski? It's like additional generic detective name.
Yeah, they had a couple of like very generic detective names. There's also there's Dombrowski from
Dombrowski and Bukowski.
Yeah, but was there something about the relationship of these two villains that was compelling to you or stood out to you?
Yes, I can think of one. So at the very end, this is why the bag scene stood out to me at the very end, where so we know that the rabbi is called a rabbi because he's a rabbi.
He's a rabbi. Yeah.
And so, of course, being a rabbi, he mentions at one point that like there's two very different sides of his personality. Like he's got this kind of side that's like more God-fearing, and at one point they catch him, he's reading the Torah, and then there's this other side that's like, total crime boss, and you don't want to mess with him. And so but I have to say, like, I found it so interesting at the end of the movie where they're both tied up. They know what's going to happen. The rabbi is accepting of his fate. Like, he is very somber and quiet. And when that bag is placed over his head, he's in a place of total acceptance. And I have to imagine that's based on kind of the wisdom that's come from like that previous side of being a religious man. Whereas Morgan Freeman's character is like, he's moving his head back and forth. He's kind of whining. He's, I think at one point he kind of begs a little bit. And it's just that dynamic I found incredibly interesting of the two of them. Like, they remind me a little bit of Magneto and
Xavier. Yeah.
Xavier, thank you. Where it's like they're mortal enemies that respect each other. But I love that end of the movie, how like it just shows you like the complete dynamic, how at the end of the day, like the rabbi is like, he's like, okay, let's go, like we're ready to go, versus Morgan Freeman's kind of slipping back into this place of weakness of like, you can really tell like he's afraid.
I did like the rabbi's line about, is all that killing kosher?
Right, yes.
Acceptable.
Yes, acceptable.
There's a lot. I mean, a lot. Like part of the charm of this movie is all of the verbal jousting that goes on between characters. But on to Chad's question, one of my favorite parts of the film is at the end of the rabbi's soliloquy on his situation being tied to the chair. He said, "If I were wearing a hat, I would take it off to you." And then it goes to the boss. And he goes through his whole spiel and he goes, "But I really enjoyed your speech. I wish I could have been standing for it."
Yeah, right.
So it's just, and I just feel like it ties things up really nicely when they both give their little like and adieu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool to have. I do really enjoy, because again, kind of going back to Magneto and Professor Xavier, I love that dynamic. That's like part of the reason why I like the X-Men series. And I think that's so interesting here. There are two people that used to be partners. They built this huge empire together. And then the rabbi goes into detail on how he says something to the effect of like, when there's two people, you can only actually look at one of them. And I realized they were all looking at you. And then suddenly I knew what I had to be done. And so it's interesting that he, like, seeing how that kind of fell apart just mainly due to ego, but that they all like always maintained that respect for each other. And then, oh my gosh, the smile on Morgan Freeman's face when he tells him that his son is dead, that like gave me cold chills. Like it was so evil. It was so wicked. Like just he was truly gleeful in delivering that news. And it was bad.
The one thing that stood out to me was they both accept, and I think it's the rabbi that states that they're prisoners. They've been prisoners for 20 years. Their life, like they're ruling this crime empire, but their life is actually pretty pathetic. And then it puts their own family and loved ones in the line of fire. And they're just at war. Slevin winds up being the one that is tricking them. He kills the boss's son. Then the boss puts a hit out on the ferry. And so that's an interesting dynamic where they think, okay, each other has killed the other's son. But it does make me, I don't know if sad is the right word because they're just terrible human beings. But there's a little bit of empathy of, okay, this is what you've wrought in your life.
It's just like this idea of like, what was this for? You know, he said at one point, someone mentioned to him that he's sleeping on a bed of green. I think Good Cat says that to him. It's like, what is all this violence and killing and control? Like what actually are you getting out of it?
I mean, I think it really shows the hubris of both men when you take into account that either of them probably had enough money to, leave the city, leave the country, set themselves up someplace where they probably would never be found. But they chose self-imprisonment because it's not just the fear of death from leaving the apartment, but it's fear of conceding the ground to their opponent.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point.
It's like you can make a ton of money and go and live in Greece and no one will likely ever find you if they even choose to go looking for you once you've left the city. But it's that I can't let him win, either direction by doing that. So not only are they trapped due to fear for their lives, but they're also trapped because neither of them can concede defeat.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Their dynamic was really fun. I thought it really added a lot to this movie. I'll ask this question because the boss brings it up quite a bit. Do you guys know where the shmoo comes from?
It's a 70s comic strip. Doesn't he mention it in the very beginning?
Yeah, it's a race of creatures in a Little Abner comic strip. So
never heard of it.
It's like a lemming.
Yeah, they actually do show up in, I want to say, like a Flintstones cartoon. They had their own little cartoon appearances. So that's a thing. I will say we've talked about Lucy Liu. She cites this movie as the most fun she's ever had making a movie. So she's genuinely happy. And that's good because the scene where she comes back for that peek and she acts shocked, Josh Hartnett actually flashed her.
Oh my gosh.
In 2024, you would not be doing that. He did this in 2006. She wasn't prepared for that. So that's genuine shock on her face. Thankfully, she took it in jest and they had a good relationship. But
It's really funny.
Yeah, don't do that. But they are meant to be the same age or right about. She's actually 10 years older than Josh Hartnett, though. So
I think Lucy Liu's going to look like she's 40 when she's 80. So it's all good.
Agreed.
Yes.
She's gorgeous for sure.
Yeah. Any other plot points or conversations you'd like to call out before we move on?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, this is from producer Chris Roberts, Christopher Eberts, Kia Jam, there are a ton of them, Andreas Grosh, Anthony Rulin, Tyler Mitchell, and Robert Kravis. This is written by Jason Smilovic, and fun fact from this is Jason was Josh Hartnett's roommate, And so the reason that Slevin winds up in a towel so much is Josh Hartnett was living with Jason Smilovic and his girlfriend in New York. And he was just so often in a towel that when he was writing the script, Jason made Slevin in a towel a lot. And I thought that was a fun plot point as well.
That is.
Yeah,
That's really funny.
I think I'd also seen somewhere where they thought that it would add a certain amount of not weakness, but fragility to the character. That's not even the right word I'm looking for either. Synonym in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But basically, it meant vulnerability. It added a level of vulnerability to Josh Hartnett's character.
Our cinematographer here is Peter Silva, director Paul McGuigan. Our director's other works, I have seen 0 of these. It starts at 1998 with The Acid House. 2000 is Gangster Number 1. 2004, he's got a double feature with The Reckoning in Wicker Park. 2009 is Push. 2015 is Victor Frankenstein. And 2017 is Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Anyone raising hands for any of these movies?
I saw Wicker Park.
Did you?
Yes, I don't remember much about it though. I think it was just like one of those like. I feel like it was kind of something similar, where it's like things aren't as they seem, and he fell in love with Josh Hartnett, fell in love with this girl who turned out not to be who she said she was, and it's kind of all I remember. I don't actually remember the twist or anything like that.
Now that you say that, I did it. It had the two of them in a very Nicholas Sparksy cover on the front, like with like fall leaves behind them or something.
Yes, like they fall in love hard and fast, and then things happen. Is kind of the plot of the movie.
I do. I feel like I could picture the cover of it. No, I never saw it, but at least I have name recognition for that one.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of Nicholas Sparks books, I feel like it feels like it's based on a novel. There's absolutely no novel out there, but this is one of those movies where it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was existing literature out there for like some form of Slevin series.
Like a graphic novel or something.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
Something along the lines. And we do get Josh Hartnett and Bruce Willis in Sin City, so there's for our location, it's filmed in and around Quebec as well as parts of New York for the street scenes. Special effects there's no budget for it. It does win or get nominated for sound editing. I'll briefly mention the soundtrack or score. It didn't really do anything for me. Any comments as far as soundtrack or score? Were you excited by it, or is it just background noise?
I don't know if just noise for me.
I would say the only thing that I really want to give kudos to the film on is, without really feeling like it, this was one of the most frugally done films that I can remember ever seeing. I mean, if you really think about it, outside of the inside of vehicles, there are only about 6 places this movie takes place in, and they are about as unremarkable as humanly possible, whether it's, the grandiose offices, which literally could be one room filmed 2 different directions. You could have Rabbi.
True.
Because most of the stuff with the boss is in front of the windows. So windows for the boss and back of the room for the rabbi. Then you've got the apartment, you've got the morgue, and
the police station briefly.
Airport. Yeah, but that could be like literally any room. You know what I mean? Right. There aren't locales for this movie. And so, by and large, shoot to one random parking lot with a missing car. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have to break the bank for anything else in this movie except for the 6 people who were in it.
Is it stock footage of the Derby, like the Derby races?
Yeah.
You never know. I knew, again, I forgot so much about this movie. So everything involving the horse race, I completely blacked out. But as the horses were running, I did look away because I was like, I know 100% that horse is going to fall. Like, because they're laying the groundwork for this. He's not going to win. And so you knew something somehow is going to happen. And oh my gosh, it's like the most brutal thing ever to watch a horse fall. It's so sad because you pretty much know like they're going to die afterwards. So sad.
Might as well call him Elmer because he's about to be glue.
Oh my gosh, Chad.
This,
Jesus.
this-
Gosh.
there's like 20 horse girls that did subscribe for years that I've just lost.
Right.
Like, you know, their husbands, they will never love their husbands as much as they love those horses. Like, just, I have horse
really
girls
funny.
in my life. So yeah, Brian, this is one of those movies where the animal does die and you're accepting of it. But Boondock Saints is the same way with the cat.
Ugh.
So,
Yeah.
as long as we're not getting attached to the animal, is that what's happening?
First off, the severity of my reaction to dogs dying versus any other animal is quite different. There's not an equality to what animal dies and how it affects me. It's very exclusively dogs that I have a problem with, and it depends on the nature of their death, because there are movies where there are dogs literally trying to kill people, and that dog dies, and you know, that's more acceptable. It's more like a Marley and Me, where I'm like, why did I just do this to myself?
You're okay with Cujo dying, but not Chance from Homeward Bound.
Exactly.
Oh gosh.
Well, it just, you know, it's one of those things where even if you peruse a Hallmark or something and you accidentally end up in the pet death section, which is pretty brutal, it's, you know, it's the whole idea that, you know, your dog's your best friend for part of your life, but you're its best friend for its entire life. It's stuff like that where you're just like, well, now I'm just going to go home and cry. So, yeah, it is palatable for a film. Like, obviously I don't want any horses to be killed in the filming of this movie, like for my entertainment.
Not Ben-Hur.
But yeah, but it's
like killing horses left and right.
They doped it. Obviously, it's not the horse's fault it got doped, but like there was an understandable ABC to that horse's death.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was used to drive a plot in a fictional film. So yeah, that doesn't affect me nearly as much. Now, if Predator had killed Siri the dog in Prey, I'd have had an issue with that.
It's fair. That's fair. So, like if we're doing Seabiscuit or Warhorse, where you're very attached and all of a sudden they have to go out and put it down at the end, you're upset.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
All right. But random gun going off, blowing a cat against the wall, you're fine.
I even had it, and while we're on the topic of horses, when I don't know if you guys watched the new Anna Green Gables series that came out a couple of years ago, but even when she had to like sell her horse to continue to eat, like that was fairly heartbreaking because she loved the horse. So, you know, there's a level of connection. I mean, you could even go with Peaky Blinders where he has to shoot the horse that he thinks has the thing. So it just depends on connection level to said animal.
Okay.
Obviously, Rocco did not give a crap about Skippy.
Yes. What color was it?
Yeah.
What was its name? All right.
Well, he knew more about it than the dopey girlfriend. So who knows?
She knew its name, but
let's get off. Had to tell her.
Pet and animal death before we start getting angry letters. Let's move on to movie superlatives. Are you guys ready to hand out some awards?
Yes, let's do it.
Go.
Everyone's like, please, MVP, Brian.
I went with the writer, Jason Smelvick. I kind of dug, so I didn't know that he was roommates with Josh Hartnett at the time, and then the whole towel thing and all that was kind of a fun thing to find out about, because at one point I remember thinking, it's like, one of the things I remember most about this movie is he's in a towel for like a chunk of it.
Yes.
So that whole thing is cool, but I could also just see having like that quiet friend and he's just typing away on his thing, like while you're living together and you're like, I wonder what he's doing. And just to find out, I'm writing a narrative around why you are the way you are.
Right. And just keeps glancing over at you and then back at the typewriter. Bam,
right. So exactly. So I that added a level to this movie that I was already really impressed with the less is more aspect of this film. I think this film could have done it without the, rock star, cast. Is it cool that they had it? Absolutely. But I think this movie, when you think about actual cost, this could have gone like Blair Witch level gotten Josh Hartnett to do it on, the cheap because he was your roommate, and, just find menacing people to deliver that dialogue. Because, we all know that there are B-level actors out there that can deliver these lines. So is it good the way it was? But absolutely. But hats off to him for writing a movie that literally was enriched by its lack of body fat, honestly, film fat.
I dig it. Writer credit.
Nice.
Lizzy, who's your MVP?
I went with Paul. Is it McGuigan? How do we pronounce his name? Our director.
Our director. Yes.
Yes. I feel like I wanted to give him a shout out. I really am such a fan of this movie that it was actually really challenging for me to find who I felt like was the MVP, just because everybody did such a fantastic job. This movie really felt like all of the actors felt like that perfect composition of like the human body, where it's like Morgan Freeman's your eyes and Stanley Tucci's your nose and so forth and so on, where it's like everybody's just so different, but equally like together, like you create like this like one very powerful body. So I really loved it. And I give the credit to the director for making that happen.
It's a great pick. I went far more basic. I just went with Josh Hartnett. He's just wonderful in this. The effortless, I don't give a crap attitude. It could be really, really grating if a different actor were doing it. I get kind of tired. I enjoy most of his shtick, but Ryan Reynolds can wear on me if it goes too long. And I think like 2 hours and 10 minutes of, if this were Ryan Reynolds, I would probably be getting annoyed. Whereas Josh Hartnett pulls it off. And I think part of it is the towel. Part of it is the vulnerability that they brought in. So good on him.
I also think and this might be the ghost of Ryan Reynolds' film past, but you've seen him do it so many times kind of as a dick.
Yeah.
That
yes,
you kind of hold his snarkiness and his witticism, whereas Josh Hartnett's is almost an amusing, God, this couldn't get any worse than it is right now. Like his character is almost the antithesis of a Ben Stiller Meet the Parents, where look at all the bad things that are happening to him and how he can just be like, okay, well, let's see what happens now.
Yeah, bad things happened.
Who's our next
I lost my job, my apartment was condemned, and I caught my girlfriend cheating on me.
Yeah.
Then I got mugged. And Lindsay's like, that was 4.
Well, when you're on a roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just completely ambivalent to that. I really liked this performance. So he's building his reputation back up from Pearl Harbor. I mean, Sin City's great, but I wrote that off as all-star cast. So Josh Hartnett, he's coming.
It's going to be the whole goal of my dealer's choices is to redeem Josh Hartnett in Chad's eyes.
We've done Halloween H2O. He was not the problem in that movie.
Oh my gosh, I forgot he was in that. Yeah, him and Michelle Williams, right?
She was the problem in that movie. So, best supporting actor, Bryan.
This is almost impossible to do. I went with Lucy Liu just because I do agree with you. Josh Hartnett and her quirky relationship is a driving force in this, but I also wouldn't begrudge anybody for picking the litany of people that this could go to.
Lizzy, who'd you pick?
I did Josh Hartnett. I think you guys said it so perfectly. Ryan Reynolds would never be able to do this because there's a cockiness to him that, if I'm being honest, in those like Van Wilder like waiting roles, I find it's funny, but it's also wildly unattractive to me. And I find Josh Hartnett has a sense of, and I mean, at least this particular character of his has this sense of humility almost that really does allow you to connect with him, and you find it charming almost, that kind of like you said, he's like kind of like all shucks kind of guy. And I think that Josh Hartnett is kind of underrated. Like I agree. When you really think about his body of work, he is a really, really talented actor. So I feel like if he ever wanted to get back in the game, I think he really honestly could. He's fantastic.
He's got
Preach.
a new movie coming out. I can't remember what it was called, but he's got a terrible mustache in it. As far as it was in the preview of Fall Guy. So
Chad,
Oh, nice.
did you never watch Penny Dreadful?
I got through a couple episodes. I did not enjoy it.
Oh,
Ava
okay.
Green's really pretty, and that's as far as I could go. Like Timothy Dalton's fun too.
I liked Hartnett's part in that one. So
Yeah, it wasn't for me, but
it was almost like an ultra dark League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes.
fair, yeah. I went with Lucy Liu as well, just like Brian. I wanted more of this character, and while I haven't watched all of Lucy Liu's films, I just felt like this was different than anything that I've seen her in. I felt like she was allowed to be sweeter and bubbly. Most of the time when I see her, I think of almost cold and mean. So I didn't even really recognize the voice she was doing because I just feel like she's been so harsh in a lot of the movies that I've seen. So this was a fun portrayal, at least for me.
You know what would be interesting? Do you guys remember the movie The Tourist with Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I would almost like to see a sequel to Lucky Number Slevin, except that it's Josh Hartnett and Lucy Liu, and they're in Europe, and some weird The Tourist-ish something happened. I'm not saying that exact plot, but that same kind of like haphazard, like how are we going to deal with this kind of thing happens. Like I think that would be a fun sequel.
I'm
Yeah, that's a
for
good
like
idea.
hijinks and misunderstandings again. Like it's not a
Cameo
problem
from
for
Bruce
me.
Willis,
Yeah.
just I'm always getting you out of trouble, kid. Something out.
You can
Yeah,
go
I'm
to
a
this
fan.
well again. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I would be here for it.
Right. Hidden gem, Brian.
I actually like the detectives in this. They picked 2 or 3 of the most detective-y,
Yes.
C-level actors that play the detective in just about anything to plug into this. And I appreciated
Stanley
that
Tucci's
too.
above C, right?
No, I'm not talking about Tucci. I'm talking about the guy who calls Stanley Tucci at the end is
Oh,
one
okay.
of those guys.
Peter Outerbridge, yeah.
The guy who basically throws him into the van
Yeah.
for that chat with Tucci. Like those guys are consummate. Like we need a detective, we'll call one of these guys. Like
Looks
the
like a
only way
discount Christopher
true.
Maloney from Law and Order SVU.
it's like a Brian Dennehy,
Mhm.
oh, we need a cop, call Brian Dennehy. We need a
Right.
police chief, call Brian Dennehy. So I really like the fact that they went and got the cops of the actors.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, typecasting is fun. Lizzie, who are we getting?
I went with Stanley Tucci himself. I completely forgot that he was in this movie. So I was so delighted, perhaps because by the time when I saw this movie, Stanley Tucci was like a no name in my brain at this point when I first saw it. So I absolutely love him. I love how he is such a chameleon. He can be the guy from Devil Wears Prada, like Miranda Priestley's right-hand man, to Julia Child's husband, or Caesar Flickerman in the Hunger Games. It's like he just can put on so many different skins, and every single one of them is super believable. When I first saw him in this role, he's like he was like swears a lot, and he's just like this very tough, like New York cop. And it like instantly just melted into the character. Like I didn't have to sit there and compartmentalize the fact that this was Stanley Tucci. He just immediately did a fantastic job. So I loved that surprise.
That's great. I went with the henchmen, and specifically Elvis and Slow. I thought their initial interaction with Slevin was fantastic. Honestly, both sets of henchmen, like this silent, Hasidic type Jewish character that he doesn't talk. Well, why not? You'd have to ask him. And they were both fun. And I'll be honest, I was sad when Elvis and Slow were dead in the elevator. Like I kind of wanted them to get away. What did they do other than just their jobs? You can be mad at the boss. You can be mad at the rabbi. Leave Elvis and Slow out of it, particularly Slow, because I'm not sure he was all there.
I had forgotten until the rewatch for the movie that is where I got orders are orders. Like that's something that I have said out loud when someone has said orders or orders. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's from this.
Right.
Orders or orders.
Recast. Who are you recasting, Brian?
You know, I feel like my point earlier on, you could have put, after doing a casting call, you could have found people to play some of these other parts.
Mm-hmm.
Would I want it? Absolutely not. So I'll just say that you can do it. It's a possibility. These parts of, sinister henchman, sinister boss, A and B, all of that can go to somebody else. But would you really want it to?
It's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
This is a tough movie to recast because you have 6 really large names and then just
Nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You've got Bubba from Forrest Gump.
Right. Yeah. Bubba Gump.
Yes. All right. Lizzy, who are you recasting?
I went with Slow, actually. I went with Mykelti Williams as Slow. And only because he like kind of to your point earlier, Chad, he kind of played this role of their version of making Slow funny was kind of making him seem like unintelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would have been a little bit funnier to have someone who was kind of erratic. So I went with Anthony Anderson. I think he was kind of coming up in that time. Scary Movie was, I think it's Scary Movie 3 perhaps, was when him and Kevin Hart were kind of coming up together as this like dynamic duo. So I thought he would have done a good job as Slow.
Gosh, it was all downhill from there.
Yeah,
right?
Talk about someone typecast as a cop lately is Anthony Anderson.
Right, yes. Even in Scream.
Yes. Yeah, that was a good part for him. I thought it'd be a really fun Easter egg if one of the cops was a Bond. So I kind of would have replaced Peter Outerbridge as Detective Dombrowski with Timothy Dalton. Like, just because they're having that bedtime conversation of who the best Bond, and they keep faking each other out, and they finally say Scotland forever, and that's a fun allusion to Sean Connery had a Scotland forever tattoo. So
nice.
So they're clearly picking Connery. At first, I was pleased because he said Roger Moore. I was like, yes, that's the right answer. And then, no, Brian's shaking his head. It is. It's the right answer.
The right answer.
It's always the right answer. He's got the best movies.
I'll agree with that.
Best shot, Brian.
I really like the upward angle. Well, it's a downward angle of the camera, but how they shot Slevin's face as he basically says his parting words to the boss and the rabbi before plastic bagging him. It's got like that fireplace kind of glimmers, that movement. It's very biblical to me. Just that, fire and brimstone. I'm going to send you to hell kind of.
Yeah, you expect the Isaiah speech from Pulp Fiction.
Right.
Yes, yes. Well, he says, he's like, whatever, he's whispering, like, whatever they're paying you. He tries really hard to negotiate with him. He's like, well, there is nobody paying me. I did this.
Yeah, it's me.
And, yeah, it's very chilling.
Lizzy, what's your best shot?
I don't know if this would qualify as a shot or not, but for some reason, I really liked the very opening scene where there's the bookie in the synagogue, and like immediately it opens up with a kill scene, and someone grabs, the person who's doing it, like takes out the henchman and then takes a baseball and throws it as hard as he can, and all of a sudden, your vantage point is of
like behind the glasses.
Yes, and like it hits behind the glasses and then turns red as if to communicate that like that blow was fatal. But I love just the quick POV switch and just the way that it really kind of felt like you were experiencing the impact. It felt very cool.
It was a brutal kill. that was something that tipped me off from the very beginning, because I even wrote down, okay, Josh Hartnett is a stone cold killer, because you could see him in the shot. I don't know why they didn't obscure his face more. And so I just got confused when they talked about, oh, that was Nick Fisher or whatever later on. So to Brian's point earlier, the big reveal wasn't a big reveal for me, other than just when is Slevin going to own up to this? Because it was very strange how this nobody could suddenly fight. That's a trope that drives me nuts. Of if 3 guys attack me in the street, I'm going down. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm the main character or not. I can't suddenly beat up 3 people. I went with the other kill in the opening shots. So we find out later it's Good Cat, but we see the shadowy figure riding up the parking garage elevator, and he's just standing on one of the like spokes that are coming out.
That is cool.
It's a good shot of that mechanism and the shadowy figure about to kill the bookkeeper going to his car. So it's completely impractical. Like, there's probably not going to be an exposed mechanism. That seems like an OSHA violation. But for this type of movie, that's awesome. And I love impractical kills. Best scene, Brian.
Best scene. I love I'm going to call it the big reveal, but Stanley Tucci answering the telephone through the playthrough of the opening scene explained.
And you'll never believe what the horse was. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite the connection. Like, the guy's just casually telling the story. Like,
and the acting and Stanley Tucci's face as, and I think, like, I know the likelihood of all of these things coming out on the same phone call is slim to none. But when he's like, there's this new Jewish kid down in the precinct, and he said the name Calevera. It's Hebrew for bad dog. Bam. And I was just like, oh, that was so freaking awesome.
Good
Like,
cat, bad dog. I love it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you do, like, you're connecting the dots scene.
Yeah. I love it. That was great.
I'm for it. Lizzy, what's your best shot or best scene?
I love the encounter with the rabbi and Slevin, where they're talking about luck, and just that whole entire scene and sequence I just think is so interesting, because he's already had this big encounter with Boss, which is really fun, and like it's kind of a little bit more quippy. Like, they're having like this I'm gonna answer a question with a question. It's kind of more fun and lighthearted, whereas the one with the rabbi is much more philosophical. He's like, luck is really more of in the eye of the beholder. Like, it's really more of a point of reference for the lucky. And he's like, you probably thought that you were lucky. You probably thought you were unlucky yesterday, but now that yesterday is gone and today is today. And then he later goes on to talk about how he has his 2 personalities. It's like, when you sit on the fence, both sides are green. And I think that their whole interaction was really fun and really interesting. And at that point, the entire scene of the entire movie itself is starting to unfold, and that there's been a hit taken out on his son. And I just think that kind of is a turning point in the movie where things start to get really kind of juicy.
I did really enjoy the rabbi just waxing philosophical about everything.
I don't think that there is like I said, with all the verbal jousting going on in this movie, I don't think there's really any of them that aren't fun in some way.
Yeah.
They are.
Like, even when he was like, oh, I thought he was the boss. Does he look like me?
Right.
Yes.
I look like that? Like that, it was great. It was like, well, yeah, but I thought he was you when it was him.
What was the point of the chess game, though? Like, the boss says everyone lets him win, and then I expected Slevin to win. And instead, he just loses and only has 3 days.
I think that he let him win, basically, because he said everybody lets me win. I think he let him also win.
That's my impression, but I didn't get a payoff of like, okay, this was actually planned for 3 days or what. It seems like having an additional 4 to pull this off would be convenient.
Yeah, maybe to just continue to build this kind of trusting relationship, not necessarily in a loyalty way, but in a way for the boss to trust who he thinks Slevin is. Kind of in this way, maybe like almost in a way of I forget what the word is, but like taking someone for a ride, like if you like go play pool and you pretend like you're like hustling, like he's kind of, it's a part of the hustle, if you will, probably.
Yeah, like if he had beat him in chess, they'd be like, oh, maybe this kid's smarter than I'm giving him credit for.
That's fair. Okay, that's a good point. For me, I had initially put, and Lizzie's described in detail, the deaths of the boss and the rabbi. I do think just the different way they reacted was really, really well done. But for the sake of variety, I am going to pick the dinner date with Lindsay. And it culminates with him following the ferry to the bathroom, and then he comes back, he's like, I've got a date. And so that was just a fun scene where he's identifying the bodyguards. And there's just Lindsay's not being subtle at all. Like she keeps staring directly at the bodyguards, probably blowing his cover, but she thinks they're there on this nice date, and he's setting it up for a chance at the rabbi's son. So that was a good scene for me.
I like that.
I like dinner scenes, especially with quail. So best wardrobe or makeup moment, Brian?
It's got to be the broken nose, right?
Twice.
I believed he had a broken nose the whole time.
Yeah, it's already broken, and then he gets punched again, and you just see the cut.
He's worse.
Yeah, that was excellent. There was a defined bend in his nose. That was a good prosthetic. Lizzie?
I went with the towel. I like hearing the genesis of the towel being involved, of it kind of being an inside joke. I think that's super cute. But I loved the towel just because it is such a choice. Like watching it before I knew what I know now about that, it was like that was so intentional of them to have him in that towel. And in a way, it was fun because it wanted to keep him kind of vulnerable. But I think it also kind of plays into this comedic relief in a way of just realizing like this dude is like still in a towel. He's just like being carted from mob boss to mob boss, and he's just casually in a towel. I thought that was a very interesting, like funny little gem.
Yeah, it's absurdist humor, and I'm here for it. I went with the boss's cane. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason that they give the boss a cane. He didn't need one, but it looked super cool as he's coming down that spiral stairway, and you just hear the tapping of the cane. And I have to imagine that's the only reason they gave it to him. And if you can somehow make Morgan Freeman even cooler, I'm here for it.
I think I look forward to an age where people wouldn't question it if I used a cane.
You've got to get a really cool one, but you've also got to wear a really cool suit. Because if you're just in like jeans and a cane, yeah,
great.
When I had that foot injury a while back, they were like, you could get a cane, and I was like, can I?
My knees are shot, so I'm going to go the uncool route and just like get one of those tennis ball canes, but I can at least shake them at the neighborhood children. So that's been a dream of mine. I have rocking chairs on my front porch, and so I'm halfway there.
That's so funny. Oh, that got me.
Right, change one thing, Brian.
I actually could have gone with maybe just a little bit more accoutrement to that apartment. Like it's probably the only flaw that I really saw with the less is more is that there really wasn't enough personality to the locations that they chose. Like outside of having the rabbi read a Torah, like there wasn't anything to that. Outside of the boss's chess set, there really wasn't anything else to that. So maybe that's on purpose. You've got the guy who's playing chess. You've got the guy who's got a holy side. you've got your one thing that makes them who they are, check and check. But, maybe it was just because Nick was that boring.
He
do
was a
think
loser. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have had maybe just a little bit more of something to make that starkness not feat complete.
That dude is pawning everything he owns because he owed. So it's got to be over $100,000.
It was 120. It was 120, like 90 to one and 30 to the other.
Something like that. Yeah. So that's some pawn shop money right there.
Oh yeah.
Lizzy, what are you changing?
I kind of wanted the fairy to survive. I don't know if that's like the right. I feel like kind of weird even addressing him as that, but that was
right.
the name that they assigned to him, the rabbi's son.
Why did they call him the fairy? Because he's a homosexual.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh gosh, doesn't feel right saying it under those. But yes, but that and that was certainly the indicative of the time. But I think that I really felt sorry for him because, I mean, talk about collateral damage. It was just like that. It's kind of the same way as Nick Fisher, but at least Nick Fisher, they kind of addressed it that he was just this kind of loser that couldn't stop. And not that necessarily makes that he deserves death, but I especially just felt sorry for the son because you're like, he's probably just trying to live his life and do his thing and go out to eat. And
he's got a hot date with a dude that spends a lot of time in a towel, and then it ends in
it's just so sad,
I like how that broken nose looks on you. Let's have a date.
Yeah, like, oh man, just let the guy live. And I do understand that, they wanted a very much like no stone unturned thing, but it would have been kind of nice if maybe that was a side swipe or maybe even just a plot summary that didn't need to happen. Maybe it's just a hit on someone else.
That's a testament to how attractive Josh Hartnett is. He looked like he got in a bar fight, walk into a bathroom and pick up a date.
Right? Like, yes.
I'll also say one other thing about the fairy. I don't think anybody who has a sleeve gun is necessarily up to no good.
Right.
So yeah. I know he has bodyguards because of who he is, but he also had a gun up his sleeve.
That's fair.
And I would say that he was probably into his own hijinks.
So we need a further backstory for Lizzy of him doing something nefarious to have earned
to equal death.
Because right now
maybe a prequel.
Yeah, it's a dinner date gone wrong, and that doesn't feel right. I've already whined about it once, but I think the title is really off-putting for this movie. It is the primary reason I never saw it, because I saw the title and said, that's stupid. And so I still think it's stupid. And I think having a character named Slevin is stupid. It was released as The Wrong Man in Australia, and that is definitely better. I probably would have seen a movie called The Wrong Man, and it could have been marketed better, and the trailers would have been made more sense of like, oh, this is mistaken identity. Haha, now you're caught between two gang wars. I'm interested. Lucky Number Slevin, I think it's a weird secret agent movie.
It was the name of the horse.
I don't care. There's a horse named Mind That Bird. If you make a movie called Mind That Bird,
I could totally see there being a movie called Mind That Bird.
I bet there is one.
Sounds like a title.
Yep, I'm not seeing it. Whatever dumb horse name you have, don't make that your movie.
Man, horses are getting a really hard time with you today.
I don't know what it is.
Crush.
So funny.
It's late and the horses are just gonna have to deal with it. I don't know. Best quote, Brian. There are a ton of good quotes in this.
So many.
I was trying to save up my one curse word for this because
you've used 7.
I know. But it's
one.
The subtlety. No, I was copping to the fact that ship had sailed.
Yeah, you've set it on fire.
The subtlety of him going, the two of you took everything I ever loved, and just almost under his breath, you both. It could have been another long speech but it was just short, simple, have a bag.
No.
Awful
It was
death.
almost like he started to get emotional, and that's probably why I imagine that he had something prepared that he would want to say. Because, I mean, this has been like 20 years in the making. So I imagine that he had rehearsed it and thought about it so many times of what he was going to say. Because, I think everybody can relate to that kind of a moment where you just, a moment's going to be big and impactful for you, and you kind of think about what you're going to say or do when that moment arrives, and then you're there and your adrenaline's pumping, and just like things just don't go the way you think that they're.
Yep.
Your emotions take over. That was kind of a great representation of that. I think Josh Hartnett played it so well.
Everyone's got the perfect monologue 5 minutes after the conversations happen. So,
right. But my favorite story of all time to tell people is of a guy that I used to work with that is a huge, huge, huge Game of Thrones fan. And he was going to go to a signing with George R.R. Martin. And he spent weeks and weeks thinking about what he was going to say when he met him, about how impactful his writing was, and how his storytelling changed his life, yada, yada, yada. And he got up there and he has a thick Southern accent, and he just goes, "I like the way you write."
Wow.
Oh, no.
My favorite story.
You smell like the inside of my grandmama's purse.
Just, I like the way you write.
I would have gone with
That's excellent.
Finish the wolves of winter. like anytime now, George.
Right.
Lizzie, best quote.
This was really hard, but I went with, my father used to say, the first time someone calls you a horse, you punch him in the nose. The second time someone calls you a horse, you call him a jerk. But the third time someone calls you a horse, well, then perhaps it's time to go shopping for a saddle. I thought that was really clever.
How many times is that man getting called a horse? Is that a common insult, or is this just one of those walks like a duck, talks like a duck?
I think it's the latter. I think it's like that.
That's like, horses again!
Wait!
It looks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
Why a horse, though, in this? I don't
You got
know.
a long face.
Let's leave Sarah Jessica Parker out of this.
Oh, no!
Right.
Oh, I'm dead. That's funny.
I think I saw Matthew Broderick hate mail come up as you said it.
Oh, I don't want to be on his list. Yeah, that's fine. We could do Hocus Pocus. I mean, she's great in that. So
She is.
I don't want to do Hocus Pocus. This is a terrible movie. Sorry.
Ouch.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a practical magic guy myself.
Yes.
Oh, I love Practical Magic.
We'll do that one.
Both. I love that movie.
Or The Craft. All better.
That's a good one too.
So my best quote is a combination between Slevin and Lindsay. Slevin is initially saying, "This isn't the first time this has happened, And Lindsay has this very manic response. She's like, "You mean this isn't the first time a crime lord asks you to kill the gay son of a rival gangster to pay off a debt that belongs to a friend whose place you're staying in as a result of losing your job or your apartment, finding your girlfriend in bed with another guy?" Slevin goes, "No, this is the first time that happened, but Nick has been painting me into corners since we were kids." So just her incredible, one breath recap. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's perfection. I love.
Just in case you weren't paying attention, here's what you've missed so far.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I'm usually not a fan of 30s or 40s early comedies that do a bunch of this slapstick stuff. But that is one gag in early movies that always gets me, is when they just basically recap the story so far for me, in one sentence. Fantastic. And Lucy Liu does it great. Bryan, we have come full circle. I'm going to start with you on your own movie, your dealer's choice. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make you wait. Find out what you did. Lizzie, we'll start with you. 0 to 5 stars, half-star increments, unless you're Bryan Frye, who I haven't had a chance to say that about in months. I miss you, buddy. What are you giving Lucky Number Slevin?
I'm going to be totally honest. I'm giving this movie 5 stars. I feel like I cannot think of anything that I would change, truly. I think the cast is amazing. The story is amazing. And to me, this is a really good representation of an action movie that is done in a way that allows everybody to like it, even those people who, like myself, admittedly aren't crazy about action, because even though there is a lot of action, there's a really, really rich, fun story there to follow. And it calls back, like, it feels very classic, like these like Pulp Fiction kind of Quentin Tarantino vibes to it that make it feel just very fun and light on its feet. And I'm just a huge fan. It's like I said earlier when we started, I'm definitely putting this movie in my back pocket, and I appreciated the opportunity to rewatch it.
Wow. All right. 5 stars,
Mhm.
Brian. I'm going to go 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a blast. It's a ton of fun. This was my first time watching it. I will come back to it. I really wish there were a sequel that is not named after a racehorse. Anything else. So give me a sequel to this. It would feel out of nowhere. What is it, 18 years later? But still, we've revisited other franchises. Come back to this. I want to see it. So thanks for this, Brian. Really enjoyed it. What is your rating?
I give it a 5. This is one of those movies. I'm not saying that it's perfect for everyone, but it is perfect for me. And I just, she really summed it up. There's just nothing I would change about it. Like, I feel like its charm is in its quirk, and you could even say it's imperfection if you wanted to, just because it is exactly what it is, and it does its job, and it goes home, and you're left happy about it. So it's I love it.
Excellent. Wonderful ratings. This is always good when a dealer's choice goes over well.
Yes.
So we'll find out. I've got one of those coming up here soon. But in the meantime, Brian, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
Absolutely.
So you could say these movies we will be choosing from will pull you in. Each of these movies has a character that is sucked into a fantasy world. And I'm going to give you 3 options. Option number 1 is Tron from 1982. A computer hacker is abducted into the digital world and forced to participate in gladiatorial games where his only chance of escape is with the help of a heroic security program. Option 2, Jumanji from 1995. When 2 kids find and play a magical board game, they release a man trapped in it for decades and a host of dangers that can only be stopped by finishing the game. Or option 3, The Neverending Story 2, the next chapter from 1990. A young boy with a distant father enters a world of make-believe and magic through a portal within an antique book.
I'm a huge fan, so I've got to go Tron.
All right.
Really looking forward to that.
Get our Frisbee discs going. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Lizzy. This has been a great time. Enjoyed visiting this movie with you guys. Thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you guys to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Please subscribe, rate, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get them. This really helps us and helps others find the show. Looking at the demographics, we've got people all over the world listening to the show. That's awesome. You guys are awesome. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's only audio, but you can listen to it from your PC. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at movie_retro, or email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And remember, producing and providing this podcast is a lot of fun, but it's expensive. We invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contributions are really appreciated. They go to making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you guys for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
Crime is only a left-handed form of human endeavor.